What would you do if the one decision you made out of loneliness changed your entire life by morning? Ethan Cole had built his world on control. Control over business. Control over emotions. Control over everything that could possibly fall apart. At 38 years old, he was the respected CEO of one of Chicago's fastest-growing luxury tech firms. Investors trusted him. Employees admired him. Competitors feared him. He negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts without hesitation. But none of that mattered on the night of his birthday. Because power feels different when you're alone. High above downtown Chicago, in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the dark waters of Lake Michigan, Ethan stood silently with a glass of whiskey in his hand. The city sparkled beneath him like a living galaxy. Traffic lights flickered. Skyscrapers glowed. Life moved forward. Just not his. A bottle of champagne rested unopened on the marble counter. A small chocolate cake sat untouched beside it. His assistant had arranged everything perfectly. Perfect. Just like his life was supposed to be. His phone buzzed again. Another birthday message. Happy birthday, Mr. Cole. Wishing you continued success. Cheers to another profitable year. He didn't bother replying. Success wasn't what he was missing. 3 years earlier, Ethan had buried his wife. Cancer doesn't care about wealth. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It takes. And since the funeral, Ethan had made one silent promise to himself. No more risks. No more attachments. No more love that could disappear. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was the only part of his heart he allowed to stay alive. She was spending the night at her grandmother's house. Which meant tonight, the penthouse felt even bigger. Even quieter. Ethan stared at the city for a long moment. Then, almost without thinking, he picked up his phone again. Loneliness is dangerous when it mixes with silence. He opened an exclusive companionship service. Discreet, high-end, private. He had never done this before. He didn't even know why he was doing it now. Maybe it was the birthday. Maybe it was the empty glass across the table. Maybe it was the memory of how it felt to have someone look at him like he mattered beyond business. His thumb hovered over the screen. This is reckless, he thought. Then he pressed confirm. Her name was Ava Bennett. She arrived exactly 1 hour later. When the elevator doors opened, Ethan expected something artificial. Dramatic makeup, a rehearsed smile, a performance. Instead, Ava stepped out wearing a simple black dress that fit her naturally. Her hair fell softly over her shoulders. Her makeup was subtle, elegant, real. And her eyes. They weren't empty. They were calm, observant, almost kind. When he opened the door, she offered a small, genuine smile. Happy birthday, she said softly. Not seductive. Not scripted. Just sincere. Something inside him shifted. They sat in the living room overlooking the skyline. At first, conversation felt formal. Careful. Polite. But then something unexpected happened. They started talking. Not pretending. Talking. About loss. About second chances. About the strange way grief changes you. Ava didn't ask about his money. She didn't seem impressed by the penthouse or the skyline. She asked about Lily. And when he spoke about his daughter, something in Ethan's voice softened, something he hadn't heard in years. Ava listened. Really listened. She told him about her own struggles. About how life sometimes forces people into temporary choices just to survive. There was strength in her words, not self-pity. For the first time in a long time, Ethan laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from your chest before your mind can stop it. Hours passed without either of them noticing. The champagne finally opened. Not for celebration, but for conversation. And somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m., Ethan realized something terrifying. He didn't feel alone. But romance wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part came the next morning. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the penthouse in warm gold. Ethan rarely overslept. But that morning, he did. The sound that woke him wasn't an alarm. It was small footsteps. Soft. Careful. His heart stopped. Lily. He sat upright instantly. He had forgotten. Her grandmother had an early appointment and dropped Lily off sooner than planned. Ethan stepped into the living room, still half asleep, mind racing. And there she was. Lily stood in the middle of the room wearing pink pajamas covered in tiny stars. Her stuffed rabbit hung loosely from her small hand. And across from her, Ava. Ava had already woken up. She stood near the kitchen, holding a glass of water, looking equally surprised but calm. The room felt frozen. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He had protected Lily from everything since her mother died. He had built walls around her world. And now a stranger stood inside it. Lily, he began carefully. But Lily wasn't looking at him. She was studying Ava with pure, innocent curiosity. Children see things adults miss. They sense warmth, safety, energy. Ava slowly knelt down so she was eye level with Lily. "Hi," she said gently. "I'm Ava." Lily blinked. "You smell like flowers," she said softly. Ava smiled. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. No fear. No confusion. No tears. Just quiet curiosity. Lily looked at her father. Then back at Ava. Then she asked the question that shattered every wall Ethan had built. "Daddy," she whispered carefully, "can she be my mom?" The air left his lungs. Not because the question was inappropriate, but because it was honest, raw, and innocent in a way only a child can be. Lily hadn't asked for toys. She hadn't asked for vacations. She hadn't asked for anything extravagant. She asked for a mom. Ethan's throat tightened. Ava's eyes shimmered slightly, but she said nothing. She didn't overstep. She didn't promise anything. She simply stayed still, present. And in that fragile, sunlit moment, Ethan realized something terrifying. This wasn't about a service anymore. This wasn't about loneliness. This was about the possibility of opening his heart again, which was far more dangerous. He walked slowly toward Lily and knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," he said softly, brushing hair from her face, "it's not that simple." Lily looked between them. "Why not?" she asked. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't have an answer. Because sometimes life changes in a single night. Sometimes the person you expect to leave by morning is the one your child hopes will stay forever. And sometimes the biggest risk isn't ordering a stranger for one night. It's realizing you might not want her to leave. That was the night Ethan Cole lost control. And maybe that was the night he finally found something worth risking everything for. Some decisions don't explode. They unfold. Slowly. Quietly. Like sunlight creeping across a dark room. Ethan didn't answer Lily right away. Because how do you explain adult complications to a child who just wants to feel safe again? "Sweetheart," he said gently, pulling her into his arms, "Ava is a friend." Lily looked up at him with those wide, hopeful eyes. "Can she stay for breakfast?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. Ava saved him. "I'd love to," she said softly. There was no awkwardness in her tone. No pressure. Just warmth. And somehow, that made everything more complicated. The kitchen that usually felt like a showroom suddenly felt alive. Lily insisted on pouring the cereal herself. Milk splashed onto the marble counter. Ava laughed, not the polished, rehearsed laugh of someone hired to impress, but a real one. "It's okay," she said, grabbing a paper towel. "Spills mean you're trying." Lily giggled. Ethan stood on the other side of the island, watching something he hadn't seen in years. Normal. It was such a simple thing. Breakfast. Cereal. Orange juice. but it felt like something sacred. For 3 years, mornings had been structured, efficient, controlled. He woke Lily, packed lunches, reviewed emails, dropped her at school, went straight to the office. Routine was protection. Routine meant no room for missing someone. Yet here was Ava, moving naturally in his kitchen like she had always belonged there. "Daddy, Ava makes better cereal than you," Lily announced proudly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That's impossible." Ava leaned closer to Lily and whispered loudly, "It's the secret milk ratio." Lily burst into laughter, and Ethan felt something dangerous begin to thaw inside him. Hope. After Lily left for school, the silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence as the night before. It was heavier, more aware. Ava stood near the window, sunlight illuminating her hair. "You didn't tell me you had a daughter," she said gently. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I don't usually tell anyone anything." She nodded, understanding more than he expected. "I didn't plan for her to meet you," he continued. "I know. You can leave if this is uncomfortable." Ava turned to face him fully. "I don't want to leave." The honesty in her voice unsettled him. This wasn't supposed to be emotional. There was a clear beginning, a clear end. That was the point. "I don't do complicated," Ethan said quietly. Ava smiled slightly. "Then maybe don't label it." That answer lingered. By noon, she was still there. Not because she was obligated. Because she chose to stay. They talked more, about Lily, about loss, about the invisible weight single parents carry. "You look strong," Ava said gently. "But you look tired too." No one had ever said that to him before. In boardrooms, he was decisive. In interviews, he was confident. In public, he was untouchable. But tired? Yes. He was exhausted from pretending he didn't miss having someone beside him. That evening, Ethan picked Lily up from school alone. But Lily talked the entire drive home. "Is Ava coming back? Does she like pancakes? Can she come to my school play next week?" Each question hit deeper than the last. "Lily," Ethan said carefully, "Ava isn't permanent." Lily frowned. "Why?" He didn't answer. Because the truth sounded hollow even to him. When they reached the penthouse, Ethan did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He made a decision without calculating the risk. He picked up his phone. And instead of reopening the service app, he called Ava directly. She answered on the second ring. "Hi." Her voice sounded almost surprised. "Dinner," he said. A pause. "This isn't part of the agreement," she replied gently. "I know." Another pause. "Then what is it?" Ethan stared at the skyline through his office window. "It's not business." Silence. Then softly, "Okay." That night felt different. No transaction. No time limit. Ava wore a deep blue dress this time. Simple. Elegant. They met at a quiet restaurant downtown, somewhere private enough to avoid headlines, but warm enough to feel real. For the first time, Ethan noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way she studied him when he wasn't looking. The way she didn't pretend to be impressed by his status. "So," she asked over candlelight, "what are we doing?" He considered the question. "I don't know," he admitted. And that honesty surprised both of them. For a man who built his empire on certainty, not knowing felt terrifying. But it also felt freeing. Ava sipped her wine slowly. "Ethan, I don't want to confuse Lily." "I don't either." "Children attach quickly." "So do adults," he said quietly. Their eyes met. And something shifted again. This wasn't about loneliness anymore. This was about possibility. Later that night, when Ethan returned home, Lily was waiting in the living room in her pajamas. "Did you see Ava?" she asked immediately. He crouched in front of her. "Yes." Is she nice? Yes. Does she like us? The word us nearly broke him. Yes, he said softly. Lily smiled. Good. She hugged him tightly. And in that hug, Ethan realized something he had been avoiding. This wasn't about hiring someone. This wasn't about impulse. This was about whether he was brave enough to let someone into their world again. Back in his bedroom, Ethan stared at the city lights. Control had protected him. Control had built his success. Control had kept him from falling apart after the funeral. But control had also kept him alone. He thought about Ava kneeling in front of Lily. About her laughter in the kitchen. About the way she didn't treat him like a CEO. She treated him like a man. And that scared him more than any business risk ever had. Because contracts have terms. Love doesn't. And somewhere between breakfast and dinner, the rules had changed. There was no contract anymore. No agreement. No expiration time. Only a quiet question hanging in the air. What if this wasn't temporary? Ethan Cole had built his life on certainty. But now, standing in the quiet darkness of his penthouse, he realized something undeniable. For the first time in years, he didn't want control. He wanted her to stay. And that meant risking everything he had carefully protected. Because sometimes, the scariest step isn't booking someone for one night. It's inviting them back the next day. And not knowing what happens after that. Chapter 2 wasn't about romance. It was about surrender. And Ethan had just taken his first step without rules. Some people enter your life quietly. Not with noise. Not with drama. But with a presence so steady, it changes the air around you. That's what Ava became. Not a guest. Not a secret. Not an arrangement. But something Ethan couldn't quite define anymore. 2 weeks passed. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Ava didn't move into the penthouse. She didn't overstep. She didn't try to claim space that wasn't offered. And somehow, that made Ethan trust her more. She came for dinner twice that week. Then again for Lily's Saturday soccer game. Ethan hadn't invited her out of obligation. He invited her because Lily asked. Is Ava coming? Lily had said that morning, tying her tiny cleats. And Ethan realized something important. Lily wasn't attaching to a fantasy. She was responding to kindness. The soccer field was loud and chaotic. Parents shouting encouragement, kids running in every direction, orange cones scattered across fresh-cut grass. Ethan usually stood alone at these games. Other families came in pairs. Mothers cheering. Fathers coaching. He pretended not to notice. But that afternoon, Ava stood beside him in jeans and a simple white sweater, sunglasses resting in her hair, cheering louder than anyone. Go Lily, she shouted, clapping. Lily beamed when she heard her. Not because she scored, but because someone was watching. Ethan studied Ava from the corner of his eye. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was present. And that mattered more than anything money could buy. After the game, Lily ran toward them, slightly out of breath. Did you see that? She asked excitedly. Ava knelt and held up her hand. High five. That was amazing. I almost scored. You will next time, Ava said confidently. Lily smiled. And in that moment, Ethan felt something shift inside him again. Not fear. Not doubt. But longing. For stability. For warmth. For something that felt whole. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan and Ava sat on the balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. The wind was soft. The city lights glittered beneath them. You're good with her, Ethan said quietly. Ava looked down at her hands. I like kids. That's not what I meant. She understood. Silence lingered. Then she said something that surprised him. I don't want to hurt her. Ethan turned toward her. You won't. You don't know that, she replied gently. He watched her closely. Tell me what you're afraid of. Ava exhaled slowly. I'm afraid you'll wake up one day and decide this was a mistake. The honesty in her voice cut deeper than he expected. Ethan had spent years being the strong one, the decisive one. But now, he was face to face with vulnerability that mirrored his own. It's not a mistake, he said firmly. Then what is it? He didn't answer immediately. Because what was it? It wasn't an arrangement anymore. It wasn't temporary. It wasn't casual. It felt like something building. Something real. A few nights later, over candlelight at a quiet restaurant, Ava told him the truth about her life. Not the polite version. The real one. She had once been engaged. Young. Hopeful. Certain of forever. Until she discovered the betrayal. The wedding never happened. The trust never fully returned. Then her mother got sick. Hospital bills piled up faster than she could manage. I didn't choose this lifestyle because I wanted luxury, she said softly. I chose it because I needed control over something when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Ethan listened without interrupting. He didn't judge. He didn't pity. He respected her. You survived, he said quietly. Ava smiled faintly. Barely. You're stronger than you think. She looked at him for a long moment. And you're lonelier than you pretend. That landed. Because she was right. Over the next month, Ava became part of their rhythm. Sunday afternoons turned into baking sessions. Flour on the counter. Chocolate chips scattered everywhere. Lily laughing as Ava pretended not to know the recipe. Ethan would stand in the doorway pretending to check emails, but really, he was watching them. Memorizing it. The warmth. The softness. The sound of laughter echoing through a home that once felt hollow. One evening, during a family movie night, Lily crawled into Ava's lap halfway through the film. She didn't ask. She just curled up. And within minutes, she fell asleep. Ava froze at first, afraid to move. Ethan stood across the room, heart pounding. Because that image. It looked like something he lost 3 years ago. A family. Ava looked up at him, unsure. What do I do? She whispered. He walked over slowly. Stay, he said. So she did. Later, after carrying Lily to bed, Ethan found Ava standing by the window again. You're quiet, she said. He nodded. I haven't let myself imagine this. Imagine what? He stepped closer. A future. The word felt fragile. Ava's eyes softened. Ethan. I don't want this to end, he said, voice low but steady. There it was. No contract. No safety net. Just truth. Ava searched his face. This doesn't scare you. It terrifies me. Good, she whispered. It should. Because real love isn't safe. It's not controlled. It's not scheduled. It grows quietly, in moments you don't plan. In cereal spills. In soccer cheers. In tiny arms wrapping around someone who feels warm. Ethan reached for her hand. For the first time in years, he said, I don't feel like I'm surviving. Ava squeezed his fingers gently. Then maybe, she said softly, you're finally living. And in that quiet Chicago night, with the city glowing beneath them and Lily asleep down the hall, Ethan realized something undeniable. He hadn't ordered a girlfriend. He had opened a door. And behind that door was something far more dangerous than loneliness. Hope. Chapter 3 wasn't about romance alone. It was about trust. About 2 broken people choosing not to run. About a little girl who didn't understand contracts, but understood love. And the truth was simple. Sometimes the woman behind the smile carries more strength than you expect. And sometimes the man who fears losing everything finds something worth risking it for. Happiness is fragile. It doesn't announce when it's about to be tested. It simply waits, and then knocks. Hard. For a while, everything felt steady. Too steady. Lily's laughter filled the penthouse again. Ava's presence no longer felt new. It felt natural. Comfortable. Real. And that's usually when life decides to interfere. It started on a Tuesday morning. Ethan was halfway through a board meeting when his phone vibrated across the polished conference table. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, he glanced down. 3 missed calls from his head of public relations. 1 text message. "We have a problem. Call me immediately." Ethan excused himself calmly, stepping into the glass hallway overlooking downtown Chicago. The city below moved as usual, unaware that his world had just shifted. He returned the call. "Tell me," he said evenly. There was hesitation on the other end. "A journalist is preparing a story," his PR director said carefully. "It's about Ava." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What about her?" "They found her past work history. The companionship service. They're planning to connect it to you." Silence. Then. "It's scheduled to go live by tomorrow morning." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. "Who's behind it?" "A business media outlet. They're framing it as a scandal, questioning your judgment as CEO." There it was. Not concern for his heart. Not concern for Lily. Concern for the company. For the stock price. For reputation. "Kill it," Ethan said coldly. "We're trying. But they're claiming it's public interest." Public interest. He almost laughed. There was nothing public about how he met Ava. There was nothing scandalous about loving someone who once struggled. But headlines don't care about nuance. They care about damage. When Ethan walked back into the boardroom, he looked the same. Calm. Controlled. Untouchable. But inside, something burned. By afternoon, the article was already circulating privately among investors. Speculation spread quickly. Reputation risk. Poor leadership optics. Personal decisions impacting shareholder confidence. The language was clinical. Detached. Cruel. That evening, Ethan arrived home later than usual. The penthouse lights were warm. Lily's laughter echoed from the kitchen. For a brief second, he considered saying nothing. Protect them from it. But secrets always surface. Ava noticed immediately. "You look tense," she said quietly once Lily ran to her room. He didn't soften the truth. "They're exposing how we met." Ava's face went still. Not shocked. Just resigned. "I figured this might happen someday," she said softly. "You shouldn't have to deal with this." She held his gaze. "I chose to walk into your life knowing who you were. I'm not fragile, Ethan." He stepped closer. "They're questioning my judgment." "No," she corrected gently. "They're questioning their own bias." That strength, the calm in her voice, only made him angrier at the world. "I can shut this down," he said firmly. "Lawyers. Pressure. Influence." "And prove them right?" she asked. He paused. Ava took a slow breath. "I'm not ashamed of surviving," she continued. "I'm not ashamed of what I had to do to take care of my mother." Her eyes shimmered, not with fear, but with dignity. "But I am afraid of one thing," she admitted. "What?" "Lily reading it someday." That hit deeper than any headline. The next morning, the article went live. Professional photo of Ethan. Blurry image of Ava leaving the penthouse weeks earlier. The title was calculated. Suggestive. Designed to sting. Social media reacted instantly. Some defended him. Others judged. Comment sections filled with opinions from strangers who knew nothing about grief, survival, or second chances. Ethan's board called an emergency meeting. The room felt colder than usual. "You need to distance yourself immediately," one director said bluntly. "For optics," another added. It will pass faster if you make a clean break. Clean break. As if Ava were a stock option. As if Lily's smile were negotiable. Ethan listened quietly. Then he stood. For 3 years, he said calmly, I gave this company everything. Stability. Growth. Record profits. The room remained silent. My personal life does not determine my leadership. A director leaned forward. It affects public perception. Ethan met his gaze evenly. Then perhaps the public needs a different perception. That evening, Lily came home from school quieter than usual. Daddy. He knelt in front of her. Yes, sweetheart. Is Ava going away? There it was. The real fear. Not headlines. Not investors. A child afraid of losing someone again. Why would you think that? He asked gently. A kid at school said she saw something online. Ethan's chest tightened. Ava stepped forward softly. Lily, she said, kneeling beside her, sometimes adults write stories without knowing the whole truth. Are you leaving? Lily whispered. Ava looked at Ethan. This was the moment. The line between protection and courage. Ethan made his decision. No, he said firmly. She's not leaving. Lily's shoulders relaxed. She wrapped her arms around Ava tightly. And in that hug, Ethan understood something clearly. This wasn't about reputation anymore. It was about integrity. The next morning, instead of hiding, Ethan called a press conference. Not because the board approved, but because he did. Cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium. Ava stood slightly behind him. Not hidden. Not ashamed. Present. Reporters shouted questions. Is the article true? Did you meet through a paid service? Does this affect your position as CEO? Ethan raised his hand calmly. Yes, he said clearly. Ava and I met in unconventional circumstances. The room stilled. But what defines a person is not how you meet them. It's who they are. He turned slightly toward Ava. She is compassionate, intelligent, strong. She stepped into my daughter's life with nothing but kindness. Cameras clicked rapidly. I refuse to treat someone's past survival as a scandal. Silence spread across the room. No one should be reduced to the hardest chapter of their life. Ava's eyes filled, but she stood tall. And if standing beside the woman I care about costs me anything, Ethan continued, then that cost is worth paying. The statement traveled fast. Faster than the original article. Public reaction shifted. Support grew. Comment sections changed tone. Investors reconsidered. Not because of damage control, but because authenticity resonates louder than scandal. That night, back at the penthouse, the city lights felt different. Quieter. Earned. Ava stood on the balcony, wind brushing her hair. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, I did. You could have protected your position. He stepped beside her. I protected what matters. She searched his face. You're not afraid. I am, he admitted. But I'm more afraid of Lily thinking love disappears when it gets difficult. Ava exhaled slowly, and for the first time since the headlines broke, she smiled fully. Chapter 4 wasn't about scandal. It was about choosing love when it's inconvenient, choosing loyalty when it's risky, and teaching a little girl that real families don't run at the first sign of pressure. Because sometimes the past knocks loudly, but the future answers louder. And Ethan had just made it clear. He wasn't letting her go. 6 months. That's how long it took for a reckless decision to become the best choice Ethan Cole had ever made. 6 months since the headlines. 6 months since the press conference. 6 months since he chose love over reputation. And somehow, everything was stronger. Valion Technologies didn't collapse. Investors didn't abandon him. In fact, something unexpected happened. People respected him more. Because strength doesn't shrink when it loves. It grows. The penthouse no longer felt like a showroom. It felt like a home. Lily's artwork covered one corner of the living room wall. Ava's favorite throw blanket stayed draped across the couch. The kitchen counter held cookie jars instead of untouched champagne. Life had texture now. Color. Noise. One Sunday morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the hardwood floors in gold. Lily ran across the room in socks, nearly slipping. Careful. Ava laughed from the kitchen. Ethan stood near the coffee machine, watching them with quiet amazement. This chaos, once would have irritated him. Now it grounded him. He never realized how silent his life had been until laughter filled it. Later that afternoon, the three of them walked through Millennium Park. Chicago's skyline stretched proudly above them. Lily held Ava's hand on one side and Ethan's on the other, swinging between them as if she had done it her entire life. Higher! Lily giggled. Ethan lifted her slightly, and she shrieked with joy. Ava looked at him, smiling softly. This suits you, she said. What does? Happy. He hadn't thought about happiness in years. After losing his wife, he focused on surviving, providing, maintaining control. But happiness? That felt like something irresponsible, temporary, dangerous. Yet here it was, walking beside him in a soft blue dress, sunlight catching in her hair. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan stood alone in his office. He opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a small velvet box. He had bought it long ago, before illness changed everything, before fear built walls around his heart. He stared at it for a long moment. His reflection in the glass window looked different now. Softer. Not weaker. Just open. He walked into the living room. Ava was standing by the balcony, looking at the skyline. You're quiet, she said without turning around. He stepped closer. So are you. She smiled faintly. I was thinking about how strange life is, she said softly. 6 months ago, I was supposed to be temporary. Ethan swallowed. You were never temporary. She turned to face him. Ethan, are you sure about this? About us? There was no doubt in her voice, only vulnerability. He stepped closer. I've been sure since the morning Lily asked if you could be her mom. Her breath caught slightly. You didn't run, he continued. You didn't hide. You stayed when it was hard. Ava's eyes shimmered. Loving you means risking losing you, she whispered. I know, he replied. He slowly knelt in front of her. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. He opened the velvet box. A simple, elegant diamond ring caught the city light. Ava's hands flew to her mouth. I ordered a girlfriend for one night, he said softly. But I found something I don't ever want to live without. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't want Lily to grow up thinking love leaves when things get messy. His voice grew steadier. I want her to see what commitment looks like. Ava shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. You deserve stability, he continued. And I deserve the chance to love again. Her voice trembled. Ethan. He looked up at her. Marry me. Silence filled the room. Then, small footsteps padded down the hallway. They both turned. Lily stood there in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Why are you on the floor, Daddy? Ava laughed through tears. Ethan smiled. I'm asking Ava something important. Lily walked closer, curious. Like what? Ava knelt beside Ethan, still emotional. He's asking me if I want to stay forever. Lily's face lit up instantly. Yes, she shouted. Say yes. Ethan chuckled. Sweetheart, it's her decision. Lily looked at Ava seriously. Can you be my mom now? There it was again. The same innocent question that changed everything months ago. But this time, it didn't feel fragile. It felt certain. Ava looked at Lily, then at Ethan, then back at Lily. Yes, she whispered. Lily screamed with excitement and threw her arms around both of them. Ethan slipped the ring onto Ava's finger as Lily squeezed them tightly. And in that moment, the penthouse didn't feel like a symbol of success. It felt like a beginning. Weeks later, they held a small ceremony on the rooftop terrace. Nothing extravagant. No media. No spectacle. Just close friends. A quiet skyline. Soft music drifting through the evening air. Lily walked beside Ava down the aisle, holding her hand proudly. Ethan waited at the end, heart pounding, not from fear, but from gratitude. When Ava reached him, she smiled the same way she had the night she first stepped out of the elevator. Soft. Real. Unscripted. I didn't expect my life to change because of one impulsive decision, Ethan said during his vows. Ava laughed lightly. Neither did I. But I've learned something, he continued. Love doesn't arrive perfectly. It arrives honestly. Ava squeezed his hands. And sometimes, she replied, the most unexpected beginning becomes the safest place to land. Lily sniffled dramatically in the front row. I'm crying, she announced. Everyone laughed. And just like that, the man who built his life on control surrendered to something far more powerful. Love. Not rented. Not arranged. Not temporary. Real. Later that night, after the guests left and Lily fell asleep between them on the couch, Ethan looked at Ava quietly. You changed everything, he said. She shook her head gently. No. You just opened the door. He wrapped his arm around her. And outside, the Chicago skyline shimmered the same way it had 6 months earlier. But this time, he wasn't alone. Because sometimes the boldest risk isn't a business deal. It's letting someone see the parts of you that still hurt. And sometimes the woman you thought you ordered for one night becomes the love you keep for a lifetime. This wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a mistake. It was a family. And it all began with a little girl asking the simplest question. Can she be my mom? And finally, the answer was yes.